Unlike Caroline, I took my light with me. If you've been watching the news lately, you've probably seen or heard a lot about the Boston Marathon bomber and Omar Cotter. The first person was just tried for his part in the Boston Marathon bombing and was convicted and sentenced to death. There were 3 people killed in that bombing and multiple people injured. Omar Cotter was sentenced a number of years ago for his part in the death of a sailor and the wounding of other people. He's just been released on bail. The question is, some people say that sentencing a young man to death is a cruel and unusual punishment. He's a young man. He's probably able to be rehabilitated. He probably was influenced too much by his brother and other people. He didn't really know what he was doing, etc. And the death penalty is not a very good punishment. Other people close to the victims say that it's the best punishment. Omar Cotter, people say he should be incarcerated for life. Other people say he was incarcerated too long. The question is, what is fair? What's fair? The law says that if you break the law, commit a crime, you should be punished. But what's fair? I mean, a good lawyer can convict an innocent person or can acquit a guilty person. There are all sorts of mitigating circumstances that we use. They're too young, they're too old, they're too sick, they don't know what they're doing, they don't understand the law, they don't have the mental capacity to understand the law, they're influenced too much, their youth was bad, whatever. There's all sorts of ways that people use to mitigate what the law says should happen. What is fair? We've been doing a study on the book of Revelation, and we're getting into the part in tribulation, the Great Tribulation. And the question is asked, if this tribulation is actually going to come to the earth, is it fair? Is it fair for a loving God who's supposed to be compassionate, who's supposed to be able to forgive anything, is it fair for him to bring a tribulation like this to the earth? Well, the law says if you break the law, punishment is deserved. The Bible is God's law book. And it says very clearly in the Bible, in Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. Period. No mitigating circumstances. The wages of sin is death. It says in 2 Kings 14:6, every man shall die for his own sin. So, if you commit a sin, the sentence is death. So, is it fair? Romans 3:23 says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3:10 say there is none righteous, no, not one. Is it fair? These are the laws that God had put down. People say, well, I haven't read the Bible, therefore I shouldn't be subjected to the law. Well, ignorance of the law is no excuse, they say. It says in 1 Corinthians, the sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. So is it fair? Is it fair that man is going to die because of sin? Well, we don't have lawyers that can argue with God. And there's no lawyer that can overcome God's judgment. However, we do have an out. And God gave us that out. You see, He paid the price of death for all of us. He paid the price of death through His Son. All we have to do is accept it. Nothing more than that. It is something that we should be doing, but we never do. It says in Romans 5, as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, and so death passed on to all men. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Even before the law, sin reigned, and death was the penalty. It's not new. We all know this. We all should know it. And since we're all guilty, what is really fair? God sent Jesus into the world to die for our sins, so that if we accept it, that's all we really have to do. We have to acknowledge Him and accept Him, and that is the payment paid for us. What do we choose? Most people, unfortunately, don't choose to accept the payment. And it says way back in Deuteronomy, chapter 30, see, I have set before you this day life and good, and death and evil. In that I command you this day to love Jehovah your God, to walk in His ways, to keep His commandments and His statutes and His ordinances, that you may live and multiply, and that God may bless you. But if your heart turn away, and you do not hear, and worship other gods, then I denounce that you shall surely perish. You shall not prolong your days. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life. Most of the world has not chosen life. That's why back in Luke 12 he says he calls the church His little flock, meaning many people who think we're going there may not be. Is it fair? We take every day, we breathe the air, we enjoy the sunshine, we enjoy the snow and the rain, unless there's too much of it. We breathe the air when we want to. We have no problem eating the vegetables that the ground gives us and the meat that the forest gives us. And most of us do it without even thinking of the Creator who gave it to us. Is that fair? Is God the one who's not fair in pronouncing His judgments? Or are we the ones who are not fair in acknowledging His creativity? What's fair? Just something to think about.